No, está bien, Joaquín.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for the introduction. My name is Amy Reinhardt, and I work for the Associated Press. For those who might not know the Associated Press, we're a 177-year-old news operation. We're global. We do some of our work in Spanish. Half the world sees AP content daily. We're a not-for-profit cooperative. So what does that mean? It means all of the money we make goes back into the business, and we're here to support our 3,500 member newsrooms. So our bosses are really the newsrooms. And so if the newsrooms are doing well, AP is going to do well. We pioneered automated earnings reports in 2014, and I'll explain a little bit more of that in just a few minutes. So Diego is going to talk about generative AI and explain that for you in the next session. But what I'll do is talk about the work that I've been doing at AP called Local News AI. It's a Knight Foundation grant that supported myself and Ernest Kung to develop a strategy around getting newsrooms to understand how to use artificial intelligence and to also understand what their technology needs and deficits were in the local landscape. A lot has been done for international and national newsrooms, but we had no insight into what was happening at the local level in the US. And while we did just look at US newsrooms, I think a lot of the lessons we had in there are applicable to newsrooms globally that are small in size and small with resources. The slides that I'm going to show you, the information is available all in English at ai.ap.org. So we asked newsrooms to fill out a 32-question survey. We had almost 200 news leaders fill out this survey, and across all formats. And we decided to write a report from this because we had such good information about what they were experiencing at the local level. And what we walked away with is local newsrooms could benefit most from simple automations, things that lifted information and not necessarily journalism. So that came down to crime reports, or community calendars, or TV listings, things that could be automated and leave the journalists who remain in the newsroom time to do journalism. They also had a low capacity to take on risk. They were like, we can't take on any experiments right now. One experiment could sink this whole operation. That's how on the margins they are in terms of profitability and closing their operations the next week. So they weren't big on trying something brand new. There was also concern about adding to an already wobbly tech stack. And some people would say it's not a tech stack, it's just a few machines working together and not very well. So as we've come to learn in the last 20 years, journalists are not great technologists often. They've made some bad decisions around their content management systems, and they are reluctant. They've taken on technology only for that technology to stop working or that company to go out of business or to be absorbed by a larger organization, and suddenly what they've come to use as a tool is no longer available. And then their top concerns, and this is probably one that might resonate with your newsrooms, the cost of the tool. One newsroom in Colorado said we dropped our social scheduling platform because it was $100 a month. So that's the type of inability to take on any additional subscription costs. Training, they didn't have time to get their staff trained. They were skeptical that once they did train the staff, that they would actually use it and that technology would be around in a year. And also, nobody is there to maintain the technology. So here's our automation wish list. The blue is in print, orange is radio, TV is green, purple is digital only. And at the top of the list is transcription. There's social media content creation, all the way down to page layouts for print newsrooms and photo suggestions. And the good news is there is a technology right now, third party, that would answer each and every one of these wishes. The problem, again, is the cost. That is often a barrier to entry, and then training. So once we understood where the knowledge interests and deficits were, we designed a 6-unit online course. It's still available at ai.ap.org. And we had news leaders like this explain different aspects of the news business. Derek Ho explained from the New York Times their personalization of the homepage. Anita Lee also talked about newsletters and engagement. And then we opened up a project pitch session. So we got 43 pitches, and none of them lit us on fire. You know, they were not amazing pitches. We got 5, I think, that were automate police blotter items. So most newsrooms are not in the mindset of dreaming big and shooting for the stars. They're like, we just need to get the content moved today so that we can publish it later. So we narrowed that list of 43 down to 5. The ones with the asterisks are ones where we'll use generative AI involved in each one of those. So the first one is public meetings with Michigan Radio. What they're already doing now is taking YouTube and Vimeo clips, or not clips, but entire recordings of City Hall meetings. They're automatically transcribing those meetings. Our part of it will be to summarize those meetings, identify keywords, and send journalists those keywords as a prompt so that they're aware of what's happening. Now, is that going to be a perfect system? Unlikely. Recordings can be fuzzy, the transcription can go wrong, but right now, newsrooms don't have that luxury. We had one journalist in North Carolina or South Carolina who said, I just would like a hobby. Because right now, my hobby is attending school board meetings. So, you know, he's in school board meetings. Oftentimes, there's 2 that overlap, so he can't make it to every single school board meeting. So we're trying to create some capacity in newsrooms, and we are optimistic that this Michigan Radio project will work. We're going to do the weather in Spanish. The National Weather Service, as you probably know, does hurricane reports, among many other things. On their website, they say, we translate into Spanish when we can. Well, that's not good enough. We need to know that it's going to happen every single time. And El Vocero de Puerto Rico is oftentimes spending way too much time during those critical moments of a hurricane trying to get this updated for the public. So we're hoping this will help with us. Will help with that. We're using natural language generation, which I'll explain in a few more slides. We're doing police blotter automations with the Brainerd Dispatch, a newspaper in Minnesota. That's a group of newspapers that we hope we can scale that to others once that work is done. We're doing email sorting, classification, and then uploading into the planner for newsrooms, for this newsroom at WFMZ in Pennsylvania. We'll also work on video summarization with KSAT TV. What we'll do is upload a video, we'll have it transcribed, we'll summarize it, and then deliver it to the content management system. All of that will be automated. Before, each one of those arrows was actually a human doing all of that. We hope to save them many steps by using GPT-3 from OpenAI. So my life changed in December when I sat down for the first time and used ChatGPT. I was blown away. I thought it was incredible. It's akin to how I was like, back in like 1997 when I was like, the internet is really amazing. Like, I'm a communicator, we're all communicators. When you see a device that can communicate well or better than what you've ever imagined, you get excited. And I got excited in December, and I said to my boss, we need to do something to bring the community, journalism community is really out of shape right now. They are worried about generative AI. We need to bring some common sense to this. So we held a webinar. And usually when we hold a webinar, we get maybe 150 people to sign up and 75 people show, and it's very nice. We had 2,500 people register for this webinar. 1,500 showed up. I've never had an audience like that before. That's like 10 of these rooms all at once. I'm glad it was digital, but I do think we tried to add some common sense to this conversation, and these were the experts that helped us do that. So, because we had so many eyeballs, we gave a pre-webinar survey, and we got 556 people to take that survey, which again, for us, is off the hook in terms of numbers. So 68% confessed that they have experimented with generative AI. 63% do not regularly use generative AI for work. That number might be different now because it's been a few months. 67% say generative AI creates opportunities for journalists, and 73% are confident AI can take on repetitive tasks. That last point, it corresponds with our research that we conducted 1.5 years ago, so that hasn't changed. Once we had a high number for that, we thought, okay, they will listen. They will at least listen. They might not use the technology, but they do think it could take on repetitive tasks, so we're in the game. 77% were concerned about factual errors generated by AI. Every journalist should be concerned about that. 66% concerned about algorithmic bias, 66% ethical concerns about AI, and 63% are concerned about AI increasing the spread of mis and disinformation. All of those I agree with too. And I do want to say, while I am I'm not a tech optimist, but I definitely am a tech pragmatist. And the difference between that is, I think the technology is here. We need to figure out how we can use it. I do think there are many parts of this that will be hugely beneficial to newsrooms of all sizes, in particularly local and small newsrooms that don't have many resources. And I also think, too, if you don't use these systems, we can't put any guardrails in place. We can't decide where's our line, where will we never step over. So in order to come up with those answers, you have to use this technology, even on a very basic level, to understand what it's capable of. So there are some problems with generative AI. There are legal and IP issues. All of your content has been used, likely, to inform and train these large language models. But the large language model, the training data, is a black box. The tech companies will not reveal where this information has come from, maybe because of legal and IP issues. There's also bias inherent in the training data selected, so bad data in, bad data out. The outputs that you receive, they say, I don't know how it came up with that. That's a technologist who developed it. They don't know. And for journalists, that's not a satisfying answer. We need to know the source. There's also the environmental strain, whether it's the huge computing power it takes or the amount of water it takes to cool off that computing power. There are loads of people doing really smart things in these, and I just wanted to point out the problems with generative AI, lest you think that I think it's all good news. But now I'm going to talk about the good news. How this moment is different. So AP pioneered natural language generation of its earnings reports. So what that meant was, when we got spreadsheets, column A had the same information, column B, column C. Every single quarter we got earnings reports. It was the same stuff. We could program it, just like we'll do for El Vocero. We could program it to say, if the market went up, use the word up. If it went down, use the word down. So in my mind, I think of a train on a track, okay? That's where we were in 2014. This is, in my mind, baby AI. This is where we are with generative AI. And for any person who remembers Marty McFly on the hoverboard, that's really the potential of this technology. It can take a CSV chart, a PDF, an image, an email, and have it make sense. It doesn't have to be in a spreadsheet, and whatever you get out is wide-ranging and varied. So newsrooms have already confessed to us how they're using ChatGPT. Some are generating summaries, some are creating outlines, keyword lists, adding hashtags, headline brainstorming, and rapid construction of HTML. So there are two ways to use ChatGPT in particular. One is for its knowledge. So you ask, what is the Grand Canyon? How did it form? And it might give you some right answers, but it might not. But if you write a story, and you've reported the story, the human has reported the story, and puts that in to ChatGPT, and then you ask it, can you summarize it? Can you create A/B headline testings? Can you create a Twitter thread with some hashtags? It can do all of those things and do it really well. So there's the knowledge component of ChatGPT, which I do not recommend using in journalistic pursuits, and then the language part, which is very good. And translation has always been a very difficult thing for technology to get right. This is closer than it's been, I think, in a long time. And I'm very optimistic about it getting it more right for Spanish than it has been. This is an example of Lost Coast Outpost. The editor and chief technologist, his name is Hank Sims, and he built this website on his own. He's one of those people who does a fun internet project on the weekend. You might hopefully have one of those in your newsroom. But what he did was take meeting agendas for the 6 counties that he covers, and he summarizes it. So this is an example of a summarization of it. And at the bottom I have highlighted, you could read it in regular language, or you can read it as a sea shanty, or you could read it as a pirate, or you could read it as Scooby-Doo. To me, the fun part of technology is the joyful parts of it. This to me is a joyful part. It's his website, he can do it, right? You might not have that flexibility in your newsroom, but just know that there are moments of levity, and Hank has really identified that. And here's an example. He was, as soon as DALL-E was released last July, he went out and started using it right away. This is an example of DALL-E's image to art one of his articles. And the thing is, social media prioritizes content with images. And so he is trying to get his content seen on social media, and this is one of those outcomes. I should say, the summarization cost him about $10 a month, 10 American dollars a month. This cost him 5 cents. And I asked him, Hank, aren't you worried about putting local artists out of business? He said, I've never hired a local artist. We can't afford a local artist. I also need that content today, right now, and this took him 30 seconds to create. So 30 seconds, a nickel, it gets seen by social media platforms, and it's a very strong win, I think, for a small and local newsroom. So at this URL, platform.openai.com/examples, they have tons of ways that the technology that powers ChatGPT can be used to do summarization, to turn meeting notes into a summary, to basic and advanced sentiment detection. All of these things can be incredibly powerful, and if you can bake a cake and follow a recipe, you can do these things, I swear. The technology has never been more accessible in terms of being able to make it go, and more affordable, because there's right now an AI arms race that I'm sure you've heard about. All of the 6.5 companies that are involved in this are trying to outdo one another, and they are dropping their prices. So the best practices. The 2 components of ChatGPT, language and knowledge, I suggest use language. AI can take you 80% of the way there. The rest should be human. I am not looking to have any journalists lose their job. I am looking to help journalists who are still in the newsroom do their job in a better way. I want you to experiment and encourage experimentation. That doesn't mean it goes straight to publish, but do encourage experimentation. You will lose out if you don't at least keep an open, curious mind, and define your standards. Just like social media standards, they're going to evolve as those platforms evolve. So who's going to win this moment? Curious communicators, so that's all of you, right? You're all going to be curious and try this if you haven't already tonight. Small independent newsrooms, this is your moment. No one's telling you what to do. You can try and achieve all of these things that I've mentioned and more. It's accessible and affordable. You can shape your newsroom's possibility, those who shape their newsroom's possibilities and limits. Again, in order to say we will never cross this line, you have to understand how this technology works. And you might be the decider in the newsroom. I can guarantee if you have smart, curious people in your newsroom, they're all using this on some level. It might be a letter to their mother, or it might be to talk themselves through a story idea. So in the future, a year of enormous creativity, I think, because of the flexibility of this technology and the cost. There's going to be a lot of silly headlines about robot journalism and how what you get out of ChatGPT doesn't have a soul. It's ridiculous. Stop writing those stories, please. Start writing smart stories. The pace of advances are going to continue to destabilize what we know and understand. So keep that in mind. Keep your standards in mind as a flexible thing that will grow with the developments. There's going to be a huge disruption that we'll talk about later to how audiences are going to find your content. You're going to have to work harder than ever before to get people to your website. And we will also talk about later the escalation of mis and disinformation. AI is going to be used to create more mis and disinformation. We're going to need AI to try and solve some of that because we won't be able to keep up with it. So AI meets AI. And we will I'll hand it over to Diego, but thank you very much for your time.